the release of the Quest of the Ringbearer, there are some really exciting new legendary legions. Today we're going to go through the breaking of the Fellowship. We're going to talk about their new rules, their tactics, and then write a couple army lists for them. The main thing about this legendary legion is that each of the models gets a new and exciting special rule that resembles the gifts that Galadriel gave them. Let's start by going through the models. The army starts with Aragorn. He has no options for upgrades, meaning no taking the sword of 4+ wound. Aragorn is a timeless profile that has remained largely unchanged since the game's release 2 decades ago. He has Fight 6, 3's in all the right places with his might, will, attacks, fate, and wounds. He has access to pretty much every heroic action, and most importantly, he gets 1 free point of might per turn. Aragorn receives an Elven Dagger from Galadriel, which gives him the Uruk-hai Bane special rule, meaning D3 wounds when he strikes an Uruk-hai. This is pretty fitting given how many Uruk-hai he kills in this scene in the movie. Another rule in the Legendary Legion is that Aragorn is now a hero of legend, making him the army leader, and the Force will always deploy as one warband, with him as the leader. Alright, Frodo Baggins up next. Frodo Baggins comes with the Mithril Coat and Sting. Frodo is a really interesting character. Having the ring makes him really good at supporting major heroes by halving the fight value of the enemy that he's fighting if he has the ring on. It's also really hard to charge him. You have to pass a courage test and you get -1 courage for every inch that you're away from him. This, along with having 2 might, 3 fate, and heroic defense, makes him super durable. Being a hobbit, they all only have a 4-inch movement, which kind of hurts them a lot, but hey, they're hobbits. Now, the gift that Frodo gets from Galadriel is the Light of Erendil. Think I'm saying that right. Each turn, Frodo may use a single free will point to cast Blinding Light on a 3+, and he cannot use it if he's wearing the ring. Well, that makes sense, he's invisible then. This is awesome. I'm so happy about this power. It makes the Fellowship so much more durable against shooting armies. This really nerfs some of the armies that are doing really well in tournaments overseas at the moment, like the Siege of Helm's Deep Legendary Legion or the Rangers of Ithilien. And it's exactly what the Fellowship needs. They're all low defense, so this power ensures that you're actually going to make it into combat instead of just getting shot off the table. And I think it's always good when they introduce counters to lists that are currently in the meta. Samwise Gamgee is up next. Sam is an awesome profile. He has a whopping Fight 3, Strength 2, Defense 3, 1 attack, 2 might, 2 will, and 2 fate though. He also has heroic, strike, and strength. So far, not phenomenal for 40 points. But his key ability is that if Frodo is within 6 inches of him, he may call a free heroic combat. If the heroic combat goes off, he has to use that movement to get as close to Frodo as possible or help in Frodo's fight. This one is really, really cool. Sam on his own probably won't benefit too much from it, but when he charges into combat with, say, Boromir, then Boromir can get the free heroic combat for this, making it really powerful, but it's also really thematic. Sam's special ability from the Legendary Legion is Elven Rope. Sam always counts as rolling a 6 for jump, leap, and climb tests. This is super cool. Now, normally in games these don't come up that often, but in the tables that I've been putting together recently, I'm trying to integrate terrain pieces which use all of the terrain rules like that. And if you automatically get a 6, I think that you're going to be a lot more motivated to look for options to use this. So it's going to actually be pretty tactical, and maybe you'll get into positions that you wouldn't have been able to get into otherwise. It's pretty situational, but it's cool. Now, Merry and Pippin are identical in this Legendary Legion. They're both 10 points, they have Fight 3, Strength 2, a Defense of 3, and a Movement of 4 inch because they're a hobbit. 1 attack, 1 wound, and 1 fate. It's not phenomenal, but for 10 points, they actually have a really important role in the list that we'll get into in the tactics. They may also spend Boromir's might points as if they were their own, if they're within 3 inches of him. This is pretty cool. I haven't seen it get used yet, but I think it's great for calling heroics if you have Boromir out of position, or if you have Merry and Pippin in the right position. Now, in the Legendary Legion, they gain Noldorin daggers, meaning that they may reroll all failed to wound rolls in combat. This will pretty much always help them, because with Strength 2, you're generally always going to be failing to wound, so it's kind of cool. They're really not going to do much damage with them, but I guess anything helps. Boromir is my favorite member of the Fellowship, both in rules and in the story. He has a Fight 6, Strength 4, Defense 5, but he does have the option for the shield, which is interesting because in the scene in the movie he didn't use it, but I guess all the models have it. He has 3 attacks, wounds, courage 6, but where he's really interesting is he has 6 might. This is the highest in the game. No other hero has more than 3. But he has 1 will and 0 fate. This resembles him perfectly. He has a bunch of heroics and the Horn of Gondor. If he's outnumbered in the fight phase, the enemy models must take a courage test, and if they fail, he instantly wins the fight. It's pretty cool. His special rule for the Legion is an Elven Belt, which gives him Woodland Creature. It's not amazing and pretty situational, but it's alright. There's a lot more still to come in special rules for this Legion. Legolas is everyone's favourite archer. At a 3+ shoot, with fight 6, strength 4, defense 4, 2 attacks, and a courage of 6 with 3/2/3 for might, will, and fate, he is pretty decent. Where he gets really good is that he can either fire his bow 3 times per turn, or just fire 1 shot that hits anything on a 2+, regardless of in the ways or if they're in combat. This is perfect for taking down enemy heroes' horses. And another cool rule is that him and Gimli have a killing competition. If Gimli has more kills, then Legolas adds 1 to his hit value. Legolas gets the Bow of the Galadrim in this Legion. If he's within 3 inches of other members of the Fellowship, he may re-roll failed to hit rolls. This is great. He is even more consistent with his shooting now. And he has to stick with the group. You can't just leave him somewhere in the backfield if you want to get this bonus. Our final member is Gimli. With a fight of 6, strength of 4, defense of 8, 2 wounds, 2 attacks, and 3/2/2 for might, will, fate, Gimli looks alright. At the beginning of each fight, Gimli may choose to either have +1 to wound or gain an additional attack. This is pretty awesome, meaning he's generally going to be rocking around with 3 attacks. If Legolas has more kills than him, he gains +1 to wound, making him capable of putting out a lot of damage. His gift from Galadriel is her 3 hairs. 3 times per game, he may re-roll all of his dice in the duel roll. I really like this power. It makes him way less likely to botch and makes him a lot more consistent, which is really important for all hero armies. That's all the models. Let's look at the other special rules. Everyone gets a free elven cloak. Perfect. Fits the theme and helps you stay even more safe from shooting armies, which is really, really good. It's going to totally shut down all siege weapons. Everyone always counts as having the Fortify Spirit magical power cast on them at all times. This is huge. That means you get 2 free dice to resist any spells, meaning that this is as close to immune to magic as you can get in this game. It resembles a Blessing of Galadriel, and I think it's really fitting. Models who are within 3 inches of one another from this list count as being in range of a banner. That's really nice. Having the extra dice to win the fight makes you more consistent, so you're gonna botch a lot less. I do think this is a little bit weird because in the Breaking of the Fellowship scene, kind of all the members are totally spread out and don't really fight together, so it's kind of strange that they do get a rule for fighting together, but the rule's really, really good in-game, so I'm happy with it. The final rule is the Fellowship Army bonus. As long as Frodo is alive, everyone is fearless and the army cannot be broken. Awesome. That's going to make it a lot easier to keep points in a lot of the scenarios. I really like this list. I'm definitely going to be using it. Expect to see it on this channel as soon as lockdown is over in a battle report. And alright, we've talked about the list. I really want to know what you guys think about this Legendary Legion. Leave a comment down below and that's going to help this video do better so that more people can see it and I can put out more Middle-earth content. Also, think about leaving a like. It really helps out. Let's jump in to talking about tactics. So this army is an all-hero army, and there are some tactics that are common to all all-hero armies. Now, the key thing is that you have so few models compared to your opponent. This means that they're going to be trying to trap you and surround your army, so it's key that you do not let this happen. The best way to do this is find a piece of terrain and make sure you position your models in a way that it isn't easy for the enemy just to run around you, or position your models so that they're protecting each other from getting trapped. As soon as you get trapped, there's just going to be turn after turn, you're eventually going to botch your combat and just get taken out. All hero armies work best all together because then it's easier to prevent yourself from being trapped. But when you play an all hero army, you have heaps of might. This army has stacks of it. So you want to be using that might effectively. You're going to be using a lot of heroic actions, especially from Aragorn's free point of might. You might expect to see him calling a free heroic move every turn if you're clashing in combat. Also, you're gonna botch. There's gonna be times where you only get a 4 or a 5 highest to win the fight and your opponent gets a 5 or 6. That's where you're gonna have to spend a point of might just to win, and then hopefully with your attacks you'll get some kills. But expect to save some might just on winning combats. This army is going to be pretty good at killing stuff. You've got a lot of attacks and high damage output, so your favorite scenarios are the ones that just revolve around killing. Where you're really going to struggle is with objective scenarios. You have so few models, and some of those models are only a 4-inch move, so mobility is not great. You do have the free point of might and heroic march on Aragon, so use that a lot. Every turn that you aren't fighting, I recommend marching somewhere. This can get you to the objectives. Now, I said earlier that Merry and Pippin have a very important role in this army. Their role is to get on an objective, like in domination or capturing control, and sit there all game. They've got their elven cloaks, so they can't be shot off it, if you put them in a terrain piece, which you absolutely should. And hopefully, you just don't let the opponent get to them. Now, if the opponent does get models to them, Merry and Pippin are probably going to die, but it is important just to have bodies somewhere on the field to hold those objectives. Remember that they won't be running away as long as Frodo's alive, so if you can sit them in the backfield all game and they can score you points, that's perfect. In an objective-based scenario, I'd recommend staying together as long as possible, and when the end of the game is coming near, if you're going to quarter your opponent, run off to the objectives. If the end of the game is coming near because all of your models are dying, well, doesn't really matter that you don't have the objectives if you're all dead. In a game that doesn't require objectives, where you just need to kill your opponent, this army operates best. Because you have so few numbers, you're not going to be able to claim the objectives very effectively anyway. And with your Elven Cloaks, Blinding Light, and Legolas's shooting, you're going to outshoot any other army in the game. This means that your opponent has to charge at you. Now, while they're charging at you, Legolas needs to be firing at the heroes' horses. If you can knock their enemy big heroes off their horses, you're in a much better position, and after that, maybe just try thinning the ranks. Because the game is generally going to start with plenty of shooting, Legolas should be ahead on kills. This is great because Gimli is going to have +1 to wound when the lines first clash. Now, oftentimes you'll come up across other huge heroes like Bolg, Azog, Sauron, or the Balrog. A great way to deal with them with this army is to charge into them with Aragon and call a heroic defense, and he can tie up that hero until he can get support from the other friends. So he might need to defense for 1 or 2 turns before he can go in with Boromir and Frodo, and then the 3 of them together can take down whatever big hero that they need to fight. Frodo is great for fighting against big heroes. If he's fighting against them with the ring on, their fight value halves. This means even if they strike up to fight 10, they go back down to fight 5, which is lower than all of your fighting heroes. Boromir is generally going to be your opponent's first target. Because he has 0 fate, he's actually really easy to kill. So you need to make sure he makes it into combat, and when he's fighting combats, don't be afraid to call a heroic defense if he's in a bad situation. He has so much might that he needs to use it. The worst thing is when Boromir dies with might points left. Expect him to die pretty much every game, so you need to get the most out of him as quickly as you can. That's as much as I have as far as tactics goes for just now. Now, writing list for this is super simple. It's 600 points if you take everything. Now, a common tournament size is 500 points, so if you want to play these guys at 500 points, you've got a few options. The best, most competitive one, I reckon, would be dropping Gimli. That brings you down to 500 points. But other options include dropping Frodo and Sam, or the thematic one is probably dropping Boromir because in the scene he dies. Although I generally save this army for 600 point events. Now in Australia, 650 points is a common size event that we see, and I can imagine myself taking this to a 650 point event and just accepting that I'm 50 points down, but I want to use this really cool thematic army. Overall, do I think this list is competitive? Not particularly. I think it's going to be really challenging to go up against high model count armies, and particularly defense 7 armies. But I think that it is still a really cool list and it's a lot of fun to play. Also, it's just 8 models that you need to paint up to have a fully painted army, so it's a really, really fun place to start. That is all for this video. Please tell me what you thought, and until next time, have a good one.